Welcome to See You on the Other Side, where the world of the mysterious collides with the world of entertainment. A discussion of art, music, movies, spirituality, the weird, and self-discovery. And now, your hosts, musicians and entertainers who have their own weakness for the weird, Mike and Wendy from the band Sunspot.
Oh man, Wendy, I can't tell you how much I love the new X-Files.
Oh, and you've watched it and I haven't yet.
So,
at the point of this recording anyway, hopefully by the time this episode is released, I will be caught up and I intend to watch like tonight.
let me just say, I mean, if you like the X-Files, then you'll like the show.
Okay.
You know,
well, I do.
I think, if you liked it back in the 90s, then you like it today. I mean, that really, compared to, the golden age of television or whatever, like Mad Men and Breaking Bad and all that kind of stuff, to me, I think it holds up. I mean, it's not the deep character study of something that, maybe people are looking for nowadays.
Okay. Sure.
But if you're looking for UFO conspiracies like I am,
always,
then it certainly fits the bill.
Okay.
So I would make sure to get caught up as soon as because I've been blogging about it too.
I know you have, and I've been trying to avoid your blog posts.
Most people have been trying to avoid my blog posts. You have to feel bad.
Well, no, normally I don't, but obviously I don't want to spoil it for myself. So, but like I said, I think tonight might be catch up night.
Cool. Well, the last episode was called Mulder and Scully Meet the Were Monster.
The what?
The Were Monster. So not where as in where you going monster.
Where's the monster now?
That's a totally different kind of monster. That's
okay.
That's like your annoying friend that says where you going. That's like a whole different kind of monster. Hey, where you going, monster?
Right. It's like a werewolf. It's not a werewolf.
Or their wolf. Werewolf. Yeah, and werewolves will get their own episode.
Werewolves.
When the time comes. Because werewolves are too rich and interesting of a
Oh yes.
Yeah,
but it's a were monster as opposed to a where monster.
Correct.
That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a were monster. And people use the term were for any kind of thing that you can change into.
Mm-hmm.
So you could have a were caterpillar. If you could change into a caterpillar. I don't even know why I picked the caterpillar. There's a lot of
were caterpillar.
There's were bears.
That's cute sounding.
Yeah, I'm the
like
werebear.
Care Bears.
And right until you meet a werebear, and then
it's not cute.
Person changes into a bear and eats you. Playing Dungeons and Dragons, there was a whole bunch of different kinds of were monsters.
Okay, right.
And so the people that we're talking about today, we kind of have to talk about it with some kind of sensitivity, I think, because it's a group of people. It's a social group, and you don't want to say not were monsters or anything like that. But we'll get into the people that do feel that they're close to monsters. And
okay, so they're self-proclaimed
a little bit, but not just. How do I put this in a sensitive way? Because they just feel that they are not quite, or they're more than human.
Ah, okay.
Like they share a kindred spirit with an animal.
Okay.
So they feel that they're more like the animal, or that the animal's just as much a part of them as the human is.
I see.
And so that's kind of what we're talking about today, the Otherkin.
That sounds so cute.
Right. So they are kin to the other. And this is a bigger thing in the age of the internet than it used to be, because now people can kind of get together and talk about it.
Right.
So if you feel that you are akin to an animal, that you're closer to them than you are to a person, or you're equally close to both.
Yeah.
The internet's the place where you find more people who are like that.
Right. I wonder what that would feel like.
Right. I don't know. So, they kind of made news in last year because when Caitlyn Jenner came out as transgender, and did the whole thing and kind of brought attention to the transgender movement, people started, comparing transgender to the Otherkin 'Cause they're like, well, if somebody...
that's kind of interesting.
Right. They're like, well, if somebody can feel that they're a woman trapped in a man's body, then what's the difference between that and a wolf trapped in a man's body or a...
Okay. Other
and,
form of life.
Right. And so there was some kind of weird, like, equated to it. And I mean...
That's interesting.
Yeah. And that's the kind of thing. So, like, people on websites would say, like, okay, well, now that we have to acknowledge Caitlyn Jenner, do we have to acknowledge the person that thinks that they're a character from a Japanese anime?
Oh, okay. So at what... Yeah, like, where do we draw the line?
Right. And to me, I think we draw the line. If that person wants to be a character from the Japanese anime, great. I got nothing... So, I mean, but that's the kind of thing. So it was brought up in media a lot last year on blogs and everything because they were like, well, is this the new thing we're going to, is it all of a sudden are we going to start having to say to people, like call people by their wolf name? Right. And I think that's a completely different, it's just a completely different thing, but they kind of made the news last year about that. And so that's kind of what I was thinking when I was thinking about this episode is that, there's just subcultures now of people who are interested in things and people who feel certain things. And the wonderful part about the internet is that they can connect to each other.
Yeah, they all find each other and form communities.
Yeah, and so if you like it, if you feel that you're, part fox or something like that, then you connect with other people who feel they're part fox and you can talk about it in a respectful way. Whereas if you might tell your friends, like, hey, have you ever felt like you were more like a fox than a person? Your friend might hide he might hide his chickens. Like, not my chickens, pal.
Oh gosh.
No. So I mean that's the thing. So what are otherkin? And so there's a book, a field guide to otherkin. And so here's a good definition from the field guide. And people describe themselves however they want to describe. Like this is like if you go on Tumblr and tried to define otherkin, like people will argue about it and say I'm this.
Oh, the definition.
Yeah. Any kind of subculture, people fight about it. It's like when you talk about punk rock, there's the straight edgers, and then there's the people that don't like mall punk, and there's the people that only like only SoCal punk is the real punk, and only.
Well, and it's the same thing with like a label too, because if the person feels that way, and then you're gonna label them, and it doesn't exactly match how they feel, then it's a sticky situation or it's a gray area.
I think it's a gray area, and I think it is a sticky situation because I mean people label themselves, and I think this goes back to the whole thing we were talking about before, is that people want to label themselves in a certain way, and as long as they're not getting in your way, you should probably acknowledge that label and call them whatever they want to be called. You know?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, when I used to go to parties and people would be like, what's your name? And I used to tell my name was Snake.
Right.
Right?
You still do that sometimes at restaurants
call
when
me
you put
Snake.
your name in.
Yeah, call me Snake. And that's, if somebody, and I mean, obviously I did that.
Mike, are you an otherkin?
No, I wish I was an otherkin because I think that'd be an interesting thing. I wish I had that feeling of like, maybe I'm a bear or I think I'd be a tiger.
Or a snake.
Yeah, or maybe a snake. But to me, it was just like a joke from Escape from New York or whatever.
Right.
But the fact is that like if whatever people want to be called, like Wendy, it's like if you wanted to be called by your full name, like don't call me Wendy, call me Wendy Lynn, or when people call me Michael, I think it's weird. It's like Michael, who's that? Is there a teacher around?
Have you done something bad?
Right.
You're in trouble.
Right. So I think that's the thing. So whenever people like to be called, I think that's where it gets sticky when you call somebody something that might be construed as an insult or something, I think that's where you come in. So, okay, what are the otherkin? We'll go back to the field guide to otherkin by the author Lupa. A person who believes that through either a non-physical or parenthesis, much more rarely, unparenthesis, physical means, she or he is not entirely human. This means that anyone who relates internally to a non-human species, either through soul, mind, body, or energetic resonance, or who believes that she or he hosts a being in his or her body or mind, is Lupa's definition of an otherkin.
Okay.
So you relate internally to a non-human species through soul, mind, body, or energetic resonance. Okay, I think that's a good...
I'm sorry. Who is this Lupa?
Lupa is an otherkin who wrote a field guide to Otherkin.
Okay, I was just curious where their experience or expertise.
Yeah, it wasn't some kind of sociologist or something like that. It was it was an Otherkin, herself, himself. I'm not sure, but if Lupa, how Lupa identifies. I think that's a good way to put it. How does Lupa identify? Okay, and kind of started back in the 1970s when people started feeling akin to elves. And not like elves in like the Icelandic tradition of elves, where this more, where it's a legend from decades and millennia long ago. Elves, like, and they felt kin to the Lord of the Ring elves.
I knew it.
Yeah,
just had a hunch.
Like Elrond and Galadriel and stuff.
Okay. So
they would, right, because the 1970s, because that's kind of when Lord of the Rings took off, was the late 1960s.
Right.
Even though it was written beforehand, but it really was taken up by the hippie culture as one of their favorite books. And so the elven kind, that kind of started it, and people started getting together, and they had like a little newsletter and stuff.
Do they wear the ears, like the pointy ears?
I think sometimes they might. Sometimes they dress up like the pointy-eared elves.
Yeah.
And it's not just you like doing it. So that's cosplay if you like doing it. Like if you like, if you want to dress up like Elrond or whatever.
Oh, yeah, like a specific character.
Correct.
Or you'll also see at the cons, you'll see people with those ears, the like wolf ears.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That move and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's just cosplay, and that's fun. Like I don't know if they feel spiritually connected.
Yeah, I mean, they may or may not, but I think a lot of them just dress up because it's fun.
Yeah, and cosplay is more popular now than ever. I mean, with the internet and everybody's taking photos, every convention is full of cosplay. More than just like when I was a kid, like somebody might have the Spock ears or something like that, or they'd wear a suit of armor to Gen Con. They really go for it now. And then people...
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is pretty awesome. And people will do some things. They'll take, like, apart from Doctor Who and apart from Firefly and apart from The Lord of the Rings, and they'll have a costume that encompasses all of that stuff.
Cool.
So you'll have, like, a Darth Vader dressed like an elf from The Lord of the Rings. So, they kind of...
It's a mashup.
Right, so cosplay is its own thing. It's not like Otherkin.
That's not what we're talking about.
No. So, yeah, it could be elven kind. Some people feel connected to dragons. That they feel spiritually connected to
That's an interesting...
dragons. Well, fantasy characters. And really, it is these fantasy characters, and that's a specific kind of Otherkin called fictives.
Ah, okay. Makes sense.
From fiction.
Right.
So, fictives, they feel connected to fictional characters. They feel, quote unquote, soul bonded is another term that I saw. And I was reading an article about somebody who was soul bonded to a character from the game Final Fantasy VII.
Wow.
And they really felt like they were just as close to this character from Final Fantasy VII as they were to their mom or the dad. So that's just, that's the feeling of the fictive.
Mm-hmm.
And there's otaku-kin.
Okay.
And that's where they get connected to characters in like Japanese cartoons.
Ah, okay.
So, that kind of, they feel connected to something besides human. And the communities and Tumblr is really full of it. So if you look up Otherkin on Tumblr, now don't go there and say like you guys are crazy or anything like that. I heard you on the See You on the Other Side podcast.
Oh, no, of course not. We're looking for education here.
Right, and you're going to... Because sometimes people dress up in awesome ways and they have cool things to say, and you want to check it out. So anytime...
Well, and if you're curious about something and you want to learn more about it, then,
And anytime you investigate a group with a lot of other people like to make fun of, you want to be as respectful as possible.
Right, of course.
Right? Because we all were part of some group that other people made fun of for a while. Like, I just talked about all the were creatures that we used to, see in... Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So obviously I've been a part of a group that people have made fun of. And even worse, I was a LARPer. We played live action vampire role playing and dressed up and sometimes you'd come to school dressed up like that. And we thought it was fun and it was all
I don't see how that's worse. That's pretty awesome. If you ask me.
I agree, it's awesome, but I'm saying it on this.
The mainstream society might
on the scale of like, okay, you're a guy that plays Dungeons and Dragons. All right, nerd. You're a guy that you and all your friends dress like your vampire characters to school. Like, we didn't get it that bad, a little bit, but it never got it that bad. So I'm not going to complain that I was never I never felt victimized as part of the geek subculture.
Right.
At least when I got into high school and stuff like that. Maybe when I was younger, but.
Well, I think you're also clever enough to defend yourself in a way.
Maybe. I only cried every once in a while, not all the time.
Nice.
So, okay, fictives, Utakokin, Elvenkind, Otherkin. Now, what we were talking about, the people who feel connected to animals are called Therians. And Therianthropy are the people who don't feel connected to like cartoon characters or dragons and vampires and stuff. They feel connected to animals. There's a good quote on this from Vice. They wrote an interesting article about Otherkin that we'll link to in the show notes. But from this Vice article, I spoke to John on Reddit, a 19-year-old from Knoxville, USA, known on the web as Naslavic. He introduced himself. I am a red foxkin who was, as we call, awakened about a year ago. He said that awakening felt, at the very least, relieving, because everything seemed to come together for him. I started getting odd dreams where I would change physically into a fox, and they were very realistic, honestly. And after a while, in real life, it felt quite real, like I actually had a tail, I actually had ears, and I actually had paws. At first, it was one of those things that I freaked out over, and then, after a while, it was like, I'm just going to play with my tail for a minute.
Gosh, let's not go there.
That was his quote. It wasn't like right. Every so often, John says he gets mental shifts. I could just be at home and all of a sudden click. The fox part of me just comes out for a while and then it just goes. And
so,
go ahead.
Not trying to be disrespectful in any way, of course, but just hearing you read that, all I could think about was Teen Wolf. Like the scene when he first starts, like the hair starts growing and stuff.
Well, I mean, Teen Wolf would be another kin.
But this is more of he was experiencing the feeling, but it wasn't, the physical changes weren't occurring, but it felt like they were.
Yeah. And speaking of fictives, Teen Wolf was the first time I saw a movie and had a crush on a female character.
Well, isn't that just delightful?
I was like, Boof. I'm like,
everybody loves Boof.
Right. How could you not love Boof?
Yeah.
And so when you're like 12, you're like, you know what? Michael J. Fox, you dumb jerk. Why'd you just friend zone that chick for the whole movie?
Right.
When Boof was there, and he figures it out at the end, but that's just always the 80s trope too. But, anyway, love Boof. Teen Wolf. I guess that was another kid moment for me. I felt so connected.
Okay.
But yeah, okay. So, let's go back to the tail thing. All right?
Okay.
And this is kind of where we get into some science. Because could that tail thing be related to phantom limb?
Oh.
Now, if you guys don't know what phantom limb phenomenon is, that's where if somebody that loses their arm, they still feel their arm. Sometimes. Because remember, I did a research paper on phantom limb in college, so I'm not the expert, but I have read medical journals about it. And so probably because I just thought it was cool. I'm like, phantom limb. But with phantom limb, so you still feel that arm every once in a while, even though it's gone. And think about where you feel things. You don't feel things in your hand. Your hand just has the nerve that collect the data, and it sends all the data to your brain, and then your brain interprets it as feeling it. So an interesting thing about phantom limb phenomena is, so the nerve centers that would handle your arm or your hand that you lost, those atrophy because they don't get any more attention. With your brain, it really is, if you don't use it, you lose it. Use it or lose it is a total thing with the brain because it's a physical thing, like your muscles. If you never work out your arms, your biceps, you never work out your biceps, then how are you going to have huge biceps,
I don't know. Oh, man, Arnold's back again.
Of course he's back. We're talking about the other kin.
It's been so many episodes since you paid a visit.
Right. So you got to work on your muscles.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Thanks for returning to show, Arnold.
No problem. It's fantastic. Okay, so the thing is that So that part atrophies. So the parts around it grow bigger. So whatever's next to that nerve section where your arm was will get a little bigger because it has more room, and then it'll bump up against that section, like the arm section. So let's say it's your left arm, the arm that works,
Okay.
the arm you still have.
Sure.
That's next to your right arm, which you lost in your brain, that nerve center. So if the left arm nerve center gets bigger and starts intruding on the right arm's part, and the right nerves get activated, you feel like you have the arm even though it's gone. So
That would be so weird.
yeah, and it's totally weird and it freaks people out. And the worst part is a lot of people feel pain in it.
Oh no.
So it's phantom limb pain is where the real problem is.
Oof, yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah, you can be hurt. You can feel pain even if you don't have an arm. That sucks.
Yeah, that's just not fair.
Right. So that's why you got to research it. You're like, oh man. But okay, let's do the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he's feeling a tail that isn't there. So his brain is interpreting some kind of signal that he has a tail, and he feels it. So
it could actually be something going on in his brain
there might be some chemistry involved there.
other than imagination or,
Right. Or could imagination have activated it?
I see.
It's like, here's how I would imagine it to feel. And now my brain is interpreting that stuff.
Because I identify so strongly with it.
Right. And it's bypassing the part of my frontal cortex that has to say that I don't really have a tail. So it's going straight to the nerve center of the feeling of where he feels it, and it bypasses the part of his brain that's like, well, I don't have a tail. So
interesting.
So that might be, now that's a different kind, and this is, people have relate this to Otherkin, even though I don't know if it's not related in the community. But there's something called trans-ableism.
Okay.
And I watched a whole documentary on this a few years back, and it freaks most people out, and a lot of people who have physical disabilities find it offensive almost, because some people feel that they should not have the limbs they have.
Oh, it's like the opposite of the phantom, or
Yeah.
so it feels like this arm shouldn't be here.
Right, and it feels wrong. And I think that's what we're kind of getting into, is that we have so many things in our life that, you just kind of go through, and a lot of people who are on medication for different kinds of psychiatric issues, they often talk about, I just don't feel right. I don't feel like me. And we talk about the nerve cells and the pathways, and if you don't use it, you lose it. Well, we train ourselves, we train our brains to feel like us. And so when you don't feel like yourself, that's when you start to get that's when things start to get weird. That's why a lot of people will not take their medication, because if they don't feel like themselves. I mean, if you felt weird all the time, wouldn't you be like, I'm not going to take this. I'm not going to take these meds.
Yeah.
Right. And then that's the thing. And so the Otherkin, from what I'm getting, don't feel right, just as they are.
I see. Okay.
Hard to say right, because then you're putting I'm not putting a value judgment.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. It's just, it is hard to explain though without.
Yeah. Without using those terms, like, I just feel wrong. Well, because now but that's the thing. They identify with something else. They feel better when they identify with an animal. A Therian would feel better if he identifies with an animal than just as a human alone. So like Naslavic, John from Knoxville, he feels better when he thinks of himself as a fox. And so that's when he feels right. So the Otherkin, the big question everybody's asking, are they furries?
Oh gosh, really?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, so
that's
right. And furries don't really have furries get a lot of crap, don't they?
They do.
Like and I would say even my friends that play Dungeons and Dragons and were just as nerdy as I was would be, they would be like, well, yeah, sure, I wear the Spock ears, but at least I'm not a furry.
Are you going to explain what that is?
Okay.
There might be people who don't know.
All right. So furries are people who are really into anthropomorphic characters. It's anthropomorphic, which means you think Bugs Bunny, right?
Yeah, it's like a mascot. It's like an animal that's
with human characteristics.
Right. Like standing up on two legs with two arms.
Yeah.
Right?
That's exactly right. So Pepe Le Pew or something like that. And furries just are really into it. And it's a huge thing in Japanese cartoons, anime.
Yes.
I used to call it Japanimation as a kid, but you don't say Japanimation.
I know that's not cool anymore.
I know, and I always thought that was an awesome name. I'm like, no,
I thought so too.
They combine two words together. Don't you see how brilliant that is?
Not cool anymore. Not cool.
So I never say it anymore unless we're on a podcast. But so furries are just really into that culture and dressing up like it and talking to other people like it, and the sexual part of it is what gets people, because they're like, oh, they like dressing up like animals and doing it. Well, sure, if that's the thing. I don't think that's not most of the furry culture. And I think it's just like cosplay. You like certain things. Like if I dressed up like Doctor Who, if I had a certain outfit that looked like the Doctor, or I don't think that's weird. So if people just like anime and they want to dress up like that character, like an anthropomorphized raccoon or whatever,
right?
I think that's awesome. So furries are just really into that culture, and I think they get a bad rap.
Yeah,
and they get pushed into Otherkin. So like, do you really think you're this cartoon character? I think most furries would say no, but some furries could be Otherkin, and they could say like, yes, I do think that I am Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, so it could be like a Venn diagram of
right
of Otherkin furry.
And only on the internet do these cultures get so intermixed.
Right.
Because everybody really gets their own subculture on the internet. Because there's a group of people, it could be a person from Australia and a person from Lithuania and a person from China and a person from the United States. And they all collecting and all talking about the things they think are awesome.
Right.
And yeah, sure, they could really be into Sonic the Hedgehog. And that's whatever. It's cool. But so furries are not Otherkin, because that particular culture is just really into it and doesn't actually identify with these either fictional characters or video game characters or animals.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of, like you were saying, the con thing, the cosplay, or like steampunk or that type of thing, where people they enjoy adopting a character and becoming somebody different.
Yeah, they like dressing up
for a certain amount of time or whatever, but it's not so deeply within them that they feel that it's like part of their soul. This person is me.
Right. And that like the soul bonding with this character, or they actually feel they are the person. Now, I know you watch Game of Thrones.
Yep.
And I watched Game of Thrones, read all the Song, Ice, and Fire books. And the main characters, the Starks, identify very much with the dire wolves.
Oh yeah.
That Ned brought home in the very first chapter of the book. They find that they find the dire wolf cubs, and then they raise it, and then like Bran's like, he can close his eyes and he can go inside the dire wolf and he can run, and they talk about that. So if you're gonna make fun of Otherkin, then you're making fun of the Starks. And if you're gonna make fun of the Starks,
just don't.
Then you got to talk to me, my friend.
All right.
Right.
Well, now we know where Mike stands.
You can say a lot of things, but you're not gonna make fun of Stark family, who have given so much to the realm over the years. So they call, in Game of Thrones, in the world of Westeros, they call them wargs, W-A-R-G.
Mm-hmm.
And they can actually inhabit, like they can put their souls inside of beasts. And you'll really see, if you guys read, and this isn't spoiling anything if you've seen the TV show, because the TV show's ahead of the books now, but in Dance of Dragons, the first chapter really gets into what it means to be a warg. So you'll have to check out that first chapter.
Books.
Yeah, you'll enjoy them. They add a lot to the TV show. But you sit there in that first chapter, and the warg in that first chapter is kind of a jerk. So it doesn't portray but if you're thinking about how would it feel to want to be, or to be part of another creature or whatever, I think George R.R. Martin does a good job of saying that.
Okay. That's a good example, because I can just recalling some of the episodes where that's involved in the storyline.
Yeah.
It makes me think, oh yeah.
And
characters.
And do you think it's that weird to begin with? Because if you ever read Call the Wild by Jack London?
I think I did a long time, like in grade school or something.
Yeah. Like, Call the Wild's about being a wolf. Right? And so Jack London, to write that book, and we think of Jack London as the Yukon Gold Rush and a tough guy and all that kind of stuff. Well, that tough guy had to basically be an Otherkin, and they would be able to write that book.
Yeah, well, at least in his mind.
Right. Exactly. And so he had to identify with that creature.
And then what about like Watership Down?
Oh yeah.
Or any of those?
Right. And it's not just anthropomorphizing it. It's from that perspective of the animal.
Yeah.
It's not Bugs Bunny saying, because a rabbit's really, even if it's an Otherkin rabbit, it's never going to be like, I think I took the wrong turn by Albuquerque or whatever I used to say, like.
And it's different from like the Rats of Nim or something, where those are distinct, like you're saying, like Bugs Bunny, they're characters.
Yeah. Right. I think Rats, oh man, Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim. Now what a great book that is.
Yeah. I love that one.
That's kind of like American Tail though. So like in American
right.
Tail, you're taking a human society and you're just turning it into what animals would do.
Mm-hmm.
Think about Brian from Family Guy. He does, like he falls in love with Lois, or he likes to sing and does all these things, yet he does dog stuff. And
That's true.
I don't think that's a good example, because it's a human in dog form, and we're more thinking of like if you were an Otherkin dog, or dogkin, then you would like to have experiences as a dog. It wouldn't just be, I'm going to talk to my dog friends. You would be talking to your dog friend. Anyway, trying to get at that, talking a little bit about the wargs.
Yeah.
Otherkin in the media. There was a show when we were growing up, Wendy, that wasn't on very long, but has existed in jokes for the past 30 years. It was called Manimal.
I don't remember that show.
I remember it because I watched it. And if anything was weird or whatever, I would watch it. And I think Manimal might have been on the same season as V, and V was one of my favorite shows. So, Manimal. And it would be a guy that could shapeshift into any kind of animal.
That's pretty awesome.
And he was like a doctor that grew up in and they always make it the dark continent. Like he grows up in Africa and learns these secrets and stuff, and then he becomes the Manimal. And because the name is so ridiculous, like comedians have made fun of it for decades.
Is this somewhere we can watch it, like on YouTube? Or
yeah, I mean you can watch it. I watched the intro yesterday on YouTube when I was working on the outline. I was like, oh yeah, Manimal, he's back.
Manimal.
Dr. Jonathan Chase. I mean, we'll put the intro to Manimal in the show notes so that people can enjoy it.
Everybody should enjoy that.
Yeah. A man with the darkest of pasts, from Africa's deepest recesses to the rarefied peaks of Tibet. It's right. Master of the secrets that divide man from animal from man, Manimal. And that's of course we're going to make fun of it. Will Ferrell was even they were talking about Will Ferrell was going to remake it a couple of years ago. That there was going to be a new Manimal.
Oh my gosh, that would
starring Will Ferrell. I mean, they did that with The Land of the Lost. They brought back the 70s and The Land of the Lost. They might bring back the 80s with Manimal.
It's possible. We can hope.
Yes. We can all hope. And also, you ever see the movie The 13th Warrior?
No, I don't believe I have.
Antonio Banderas.
Ooh.
Yes.
No.
Too sexy, Antonio.
Yes.
And this is when he was in prime sexiness. In like 2000, maybe 1998, I think the movie came out. Maybe a little later. I know they shot it in the 90s, and then it didn't test well, so then it sat around for a little while. It was based on a Michael Crichton novel called The Eaters of the Dead.
Ooh.
Yes. And anyway, we don't have to go over why Antonio Banderas has to go to Europe to fight these Eaters of the Dead in the 8th century. But so the clan of people that they fight and that they take on wear bear skins. And the idea is that they think they're bears.
Oh, cool.
They believe they're bears.
Okay.
And the novel, in Eaters of the Dead, the novel, they're akin to Neanderthals. So they're Neanderthals that wear the bear skins and feel that they're bears.
Okay.
And in the movie, they're less Neanderthal and just more dudes that wear bear skins and fight Antonio Banderas. And a pack of Vikings. And it's definitely, I think it's on Netflix where you guys can enjoy The 13th Warrior because it might have slipped by you back when it came out. But the reason I kind of want to talk about it is that it's that idea of wearing the pelt.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes down to the Skinwalkers.
Ew.
Yes. And the Skinwalkers are like evil wizards in Native American in First Nations mythology. So legend has it skinwalkers can have the power to read human thoughts. They possess the ability to make any human or animal noise they choose. They can use the voice or of a relative or the cry of an infant to lure victims out of the safety of their homes.
Oh, that sounds like Game of Thrones.
Yeah, and the skinwalkers cannot enter a home without invitation. So they're like vampires that way. And, I'm going to butcher this. The Yi Naldotushi.
Okay.
Yi Naldushi. Anyway, I don't know Navajo, obviously. And I always think skinwalkers when I think of Navajo code talkers because the words are so similar, it's like, but, right. And I know that the code talkers were not skinwalkers, but if the code talkers were skinwalkers, then World War II would have been over a lot sooner.
Right. Gosh.
But the thing is, they wear the pelt of the animal, and then they can become into that animal.
Oh.
And that's the early stories of werewolves too, is that you would have to wear the pelt of a wolf, and you would wear that, and that's what would help turn you into it.
Ah, okay. That's really different from what we're used to seeing in the movies and stuff.
Yeah, because it's like a full moon.
Right, and the transformation actually is the physical transformation. It's not just somebody putting on a suit,
Right, putting on a wolf suit. And that
right.
But that's kind of how the original werewolf legends were. Like you put on a wolf suit, and this may come from something called clinical lycanthropy. And I remember reading about this when I was a kid because I was like, oh my God, lycanthropy is real. Because if you're a lycanthrope, it means you're a were creature.
Oh, okay.
Like lycanthropy. So if you're a lycanthrope in a Dungeons and Dragons game or something like that, or in a movie, then you're a creature that can shapeshift into something else. You're a shifter.
I see. Okay.
And so when I remember as a kid, I was reading these books. I'm like, oh my God, lycanthropes are real. And I was like, what? That can't be, because it's like blowing my mind.
Right. Yeah, of course.
But clinical lycanthropy is based on people believing that they are these creatures, that they are werewolves, that they can shapeshift. And this is something we'll have to get to in the werewolf episode with like famous cases of clinical lycanthropy and people putting on the wolf suit and biting other people, or attacking things or going for your chickens.
Nice.
Kind of deal.
Bringing it full circle.
Yeah. And so that's where like lycanthropy, clinical lycanthropy was, I believe, in the DSM for disorders.
Okay.
And, I don't believe that's very popular in the Otherkin community.
Sure.
Because they're classifying someone that believes that they are another creature as a disorder.
Right.
Right? Well, homosexuality was in the diagnostic
right,
DSM,
exactly.
For a long time. So it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in the same realm of things there. I'm not equating one thing to another.
Right. No, I understand what you mean.
So skinwalkers are these awesome Native American beasts. And they, in the X-Files episode Shapes, bringing it back to the X-Files, the first season they take on the skinwalkers.
Whoa.
So you can see that in the first season of the X-Files.
Okay. Cool.
And one cool thing, one movie that just came out with my man Kurt Russell.
Yay.
In full Western mode. Anyway, just watched it over Christmas break. It was a movie called Bone Tomahawk.
Okay.
And Bone Tomahawk is kind of like a horror Western.
Oh, cool.
And so basically it deals with the Wendigo.
Hey, that sounds like something I should be in.
I don't know if you want to be in the Wendigo.
Uh-oh, okay.
Because they're vicious cannibals.
Oh, no.
Yeah, the Wendigo.
Wendy no-go.
You're right, the Wendigo.
Okay.
But like the Wendigo are these cannibalistic spirits, and part of the legend is that the skinwalkers, when they died, the spirits would sometimes come back and inhabit people and cause them to be cannibalistic savages.
Okay, I think that movie sounds really interesting. Is that out in the theaters now, or is...
I believe it's on DVD now.
Oh, already?
Yeah.
Weird.
So,
okay.
Bone
I'm way out of
Tomahawk.
touch in the movie.
That's okay. That's okay. But it deals with... And there's a movie called Wendigo, and, I mean, it's that tradition of cannibalism is something that, it used to get... Obviously, it gets really cold in the winter, and that's when the Wendigo spirit would come out, or people would be possessed by that. And I think a lot of that comes from people run out of food in the winter, and you run out of food, and then you think your neighbor starts looking good. Hey, look at that guy in the teepee over there.
Yummy.
Yeah, he looks good enough to eat. And and so the thing is that they, you create this legend of the Wendigo to discourage cannibalism, and they even have like a Wendigo dance. They do. It's a satirical dance.
Okay.
Meant to warn people, don't eat your friends as soon as it gets cold. Because you could die. I mean,
wow.
When you're dealing with, obviously we don't have in the United States, we don't have to worry about famine. Because even if it's like, I guess we might with global warming and stuff. But like, even if we run out of food or something like that, it's like we still have so many Twinkies we can eat for a long time. Really.
A never-ending reserve of Twinkies.
Think about if there was a zombie apocalypse. If you could raid like a super Walmart or something like that with a non-perishable food alone, you could probably live the rest of your life. Maybe not a big group of people, but you could yourself live the rest of your life. And if you're back in, ancient times or something like that, and it's cold it gets cold in Wisconsin right now.
Right.
Back then, if there's a famine and a drought, they didn't save enough grain or corn or whatever, you're going to have to eat your friends. And so the spirit of the Wendigo. And the reason I kind of bring it up is a movie, and I'm not saying that the Otherkin are Wendigo, but I'm saying the Otherkin, the idea of the Skinwalkers and that legend comes in of the people that felt they were akin to beasts. They wore the skin of the beasts. And then when they died, they came back as the spirit of these cannibals. And so, anyway, Bone Tomahawk, you'll see what I'm talking about. And it's a great movie.
Very interesting.
Yeah. And so I think these communities, it's really great that people can, get together and talk. And
yeah.
And we've had our own experience with other kin, have we not, Wendy?
We have. I was just thinking about that.
Okay. Why don't you elucidate me? Why don't you jog my memory for a second and give me a little...
Well, there was a city that we used to play at very frequently. Our band played at and did really well. And are we going to talk about? Or should we name the city?
We should name the city. It's the home of Bon Iver.
Yes, Eau Claire, Wisconsin, middle of the state, beautiful, scenic,
dangerous.
Loved going up there. Yeah, dangerous. And we met several people who were very convinced that they were, I guess, part werewolf. Or completely werewolf? Or,
I don't know if werewolf but like convinced that they were wolves.
To the point where, we'd be at a party and somebody would just start howling wildly. Like,
howling at the moon.
Like at an after party and we're standing around in the kitchen. People are, having a drink or whatever.
Or 10.
And talking. And as you do at parties. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, one dude just steps back and just starts howling, like just crazy loud. Like he just got possessed.
Right.
And the people who knew the guy and were friends with him, just nobody really even flinched, and we're kind of like, what's going on here?
Yeah. I'm kind of a little terrified. Like, what's up?
But he wasn't the only one. And there seemed to be a grouping of them in Eau Claire.
Well, and the fact that, there was a magical aspect to it too.
Right, that's right. Yeah.
Because one of the guys that they knew came and told us that one of the people in particular said to him that a strange man gave him an elixir.
It was like, it was a vial with potion in it,
and that potion could turn him into a wolf.
Yeah, so that made me feel like we stepped into a book, like a fantasy story.
Right, it made me feel soul connected to somebody in a fantasy story because I'm like. It made me feel like I'm in an H.P. Lovecraft book or something like what's going on in Eau Claire?
Because the person who told us that completely believed it, or at least he was convincing enough that
he convinced us that he was convinced he believed.
Right, exactly. So he was a nice guy and a normal enough person, right? So I was just like, this is very interesting, piece of information.
You can't be around my chickens. And, like we can hang out or whatever, but...
So that was definitely a very curious chapter in the Sunspot touring history.
Not by the coop, brother. Okay, not just that, though. There was also somebody that felt soul connected to a zombie. Remember, like, there'd be a point in the night where the guy would stop talking and just start growling?
No, I don't remember that, but I believe it.
You believe it. Yeah, I remember it, because he was hiding under a table. and like growling and reaching for people as they came by.
Oh, goodness.
And his nickname was Zombie. And so they're like, no, he just thinks he's a zombie.
It seems like a little bit of a liability at a party, having somebody
Right.
like that.
Right, having the growling grabber.
Like, right, exactly. Like you're standing there eating chips. All of a sudden you feel something on your foot, like from under the table.
Take your friend home, man. He's growling and grabbing people. He's terrifying the straights. And, right, so anyway, but they were cool and stuff like that. And they were fun guys. It just was an interesting thing because I'd never really heard of it.
It was interesting. And it was like, at the time, also, I mean, it seemed strange, but it also didn't seem strange.
Yeah,
like we were hanging out with these people and they're great. And like, just like, oh yeah, he's a werewolf. Okay, cool.
Yeah. He thinks he's a wolf. Okay.
Yeah.
And so,
and this is way before, I mean, the internet was around, of course, but I don't think.
This is way before I knew what a furry was.
Yeah, me too.
And this is way before I even thought that I would realize that people would eventually feel part other.
Yeah.
The only time I'd ever heard of it was lycanthropy, like the clinical lycanthropy.
Yeah.
No, so we've experienced the community on our own. It's interesting and it was fun and stuff like that, but it's definitely a group and it definitely has a lot of pop culture references and a lot of paranormal references.
Right.
At the same time.
Indeed.
So speaking of wearing another creature on top of you, the song this week is kind of feeling that you're in a different body and that maybe you're not in the right place, and maybe you discover that you're the wrong person or feel akin to something else. So this week, the new Sunspot song is called Another Skin.
Someone's calling you. You hear the sound, but you forget your name. 'Cause everything has changed. And every second's a page from the wrong story. And every breath is unusual air. You're living a different life, and it's wholly unfair under another skin. And right before your eyes, everything begins again. Something survives under another skin. And right before your eyes, everything begins again. Something survives. The words come out differently. You speak out loud, but the meaning's wrong. There's somewhere else you belong. You're moving inside an alien's body, and every feeling a foreign caress. A stranger in a stranger land who can't shake the separateness under another skin. And right before your eyes, everything begins again. Something survives under another skin. And right before your eyes, everything begins
Thank you for listening to today's episode. You can find us online at OthersidePodcast.com. Until next time, see you on the other side.
You know, your biceps. You never work out your biceps, then how are you going to have huge biceps, you know? Right. Of course he's back with talking about the Otherkin.